All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Archive Podcast. It's officially episode 7.
Yes.
And
Lucky.
Do we feel like I feel accomplished? Episode 7.
Yeah, big time.
100%.
And then now it's in the stretch of we know like how we want to talk to each other.
Right.
And now it's just figuring out the beautiful topics we want to talk about each week.
That's because we're not bringing dumb topics.
No.
Helpful topics. We're here to help.
Yeah.
Here to serve.
And I feel like that is what we got right here.
I got a dad joke to start you with. Ready for this one? So when I was running for KY governor, Kentucky Youth Assembly governor in middle school, I had to have a campaign slogan. And so my mom came up with Phelps helps. It's in the name.
I like that.
Because HELP.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I've always been told if you have to explain
like
the
that.
joke, it's not funny, but I think it's great.
You didn't even have to explain it, but when you did explain it, it made it less funny right there.
I'm sorry.
Because I got it the first time.
See, I need to commit. Because I often doubt. People are like, and like they don't get it, but it's really them just being like, it's a mid joke. You should have just left it there. Don't explain it. All right. Well, so speaking of being helpful, on this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about how to get your start in whatever, like respective field. So you're going to cover which topic?
Wedding filmmaking.
And I'm going to cover being a communication strategist. Now, here's what I will say. I think for people who are like, I'm not really interested in either of those, I think there are going to be principles that apply to all fields. So
100%. And the thing with wedding filmmaking, like, yes, there is exact things I'm going to talk about that would help someone get into that field, but it's just kind of business or a creative space in general.
Yeah.
These things will help guide you in the direction of getting a start in whatever it is.
And I think the one thing that will come from this podcast that will be really helpful to a lot of people is that because we naturally think through storytelling and marketing, if you're looking to start a business of like in the restaurant industry or in small goods out of your home, or you want to get involved in like having an Etsy shop, I think a lot of these things are going to apply. So you ready to get started?
100%.
Let's hop in. All right. So when did you know, because this is a question I've been meaning to ask you anyways, I've been saving it for the pod. When did you know that you were going to start the business?
Yes. And I want to kind of even start from this, like, all right, you don't know who I am. Why should I even like give you an ounce of attention right now? So over the last 5 years, I have filmed over 100 weddings. So that is why I feel like I am qualified to talk about how to get a start in wedding filmmaking. What was your initial question again?
I'm taking photos so that I'm going to make a funny story about this. I was listening. I promise. I'm telling you now like I'm telling my wife.
And I was listening to your question, but I knew I wanted to say that from the get-go, and then I totally forgot your question.
No, so an explanation of what I was doing. I was taking photos because I think it would be funny. Like, it looks like I have notes pulled up on my screen, but it's really just my text messages, and I don't want to miss like client stuff.
That's
this is,
good.
I'm here.
Yeah.
But I've also got to be here.
Fair enough.
And I'm also talking to Whit right now.
Well, because there's been times you've had the laptop pulled up, and I was like, and I'll be saying something, and I'm like, oh, he must really like what I'm saying right there.
No, I really have written your stuff down before because you have good quotes. All right, now to go back though. So when did you know? Like when was the definitive moment? And the reason I ask that is I have a definitive moment. I remember where I was sitting, all of the things.
Yes.
Go for it.
So whenever I began my videography business, I knew weddings were an easy in. And the reason I say that, and this is one of my biggest pieces of advice for anyone looking to get into video or photo, start with weddings. Here's why. It is the one thing in life that there are so many different levels. There's levels to a budget. You know people getting married, always, pretty much. Like, people are always getting married. You will never run out of clients. Photo and video for weddings, never going to go away. People are always going to have photo and video for weddings. And then the entry level is so easy. Like, because all you have to do is say, hey, I'm starting off doing photo and video. Would anybody like to hire me for their wedding at a very affordable price? And there's people that do not care as much of what their photo or video look like. They want to just have a cheap, affordable option.
And can I throw out a creative idea I've been thinking about?
Yes.
If I was like in college right now, 100%, this is exactly what I would do. So this is an iPhone 13, okay? I need Apple to hurry on up with the September event, right? Because I need to upgrade. But I would feel confident enough to go to a wedding couple and say, hey, I'm not going to make a wedding film for you. I'm going to do all of your content production for the day.
The wedding I just did last Friday, she hired someone just to do phone content. And she posted that reel yesterday, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of likes and comments. And so 100, I mean, that is even going to be its own category here in the next, like, I mean, it already is its own category. A lot of planners, coordinators are taking on that task of adding that to whatever they're already offering day of. They're saying, hey, let me create a behind the scenes iPhone content reel so that you have it like immediately, because that's what people kind of want to see too.
It was the same idea as a few years ago when like a bunch of wedding photographers started carrying Instax. What are those, the Polaroid cameras?
Mini, Insta, I don't know.
But you know what I'm saying? Like they would take that along with like their professional cameras because it's immediate. It's like the gratification of having something. Anyways, okay, so here's the point I will make out of that. I think that even what we're talking about right now, what we're batting back and forth, is the idea that gets all of us into business, which is there's a problem and then we find a solution. And that is all business is. Business is literally identifying a problem that people or the market has and then designing a solution for it.
100%. So what I did to get my start in wedding filmmaking is I said on Facebook, friends and family, right, are on Facebook. I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing wedding video. Let me know if you have anybody in mind. I don't even know, I can't remember if I said the price like in the post, but it was a very affordable price. And that got my foot in the door. And that's all I needed, is that one wedding to get my foot in the door. Because what happened, if you know of a 22-year-old getting married, guess what? There's going to be about 10 other 22-year-old girls at that wedding that are also going to be getting married in the next few years. So there you have 10 other clients ready to book you in the next few years. That's massive. And then also, the easiest way to get into wedding filmmaking or photography, we said it before, do some free work. So my second wedding I ever did, maybe third, I knew this couple. I knew they'd be easy to work with. That's also a key. I knew they were a good-looking couple as well. So, like, I knew the video was just going to look a little bit better as well.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
And so I went to them. I said, hey, can I do a free wedding video for you?
Yeah.
I also knew they had a lot of influence. They had a lot of people following them. And so I knew that one wedding would turn into a few more down the road.
And let's also just clarify, because I know exactly what you meant, but I think some people might hear the term like good looking couple and be like, oh, that's your subjective terms of like hot or not. No. In our eyes, one of the things I think that's the quickest to understand once you get behind the camera is that when we talk about people who are good looking, what we define that is you have a genuine smile.
Yes.
We're not talking about body types.
No.
We're not talking about hairstyles.
No.
We're talking about people that when they smile, when they interact with other people,
it's easy to capture
who
they
right.
are.
That's exactly right. So it's not a particular style of person or hair color or body figure. It's like those people look good on camera, not because of how they look, but how they conduct themselves. You know what I'm saying?
I knew they'd be super flexible, easy to work with.
Gosh, yeah.
So that's where I started. And it may even be good for you to just kind of throw maybe some questions at me.
Yeah, okay, so you do this first piece. What do you feel like on the day of? Are you nervous?
Dude, so I'll just walk you through that day, man. I had never done a shoot over like 30 minutes. Because I'm just doing quick business promo stuff. Maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, like maybe. That was the longest type of production I've ever done. So I show up with one camera battery. I just didn't know any better. I show up with one camera battery, and quickly I realize when it's at half of my camera battery, I'm like, oh my gosh. We still got 4 more hours in this day or whatever. So I'm in the corner at the reception charging my camera battery. Meanwhile, I'm on my iPhone, my first wedding ever. And I hadn't done many professional videos even before the weddings. Like weddings were one of the first things to my business. So I'm like videoing the reception, like the bouquet toss on my phone, my battery's charging in the back. But I didn't let the important thing to that story is that is okay.
Yeah.
They knew what they were getting when they hired me to do my first wedding ever. And I quickly ordered more batteries directly after that wedding. And I learned the hard way is like, you don't know what you don't know. And that was the case. But what I did is I used every single wedding to just learn something a little bit more every single time. That's all it was. Like, it wasn't a failure that I was doing things wrong because I just didn't know. So what I was doing is I was just kind of making mental notes in my head. What do I need to improve from this wedding to the next just to make it a little bit better?
So there's a principle that NASA talks about called the unknown unknowns. In fact, right now it was the Wall Street Journal, I think, had a podcast episode about it this morning. Right now there are 2 astronauts who are currently stranded on the International Space Station, and they kind of flash back to an interview they did before they took off, and that's one of the things that they were talking about. There are things that are going to happen on this mission that are just unknown unknowns. It's the unknown and the unknowable.
Wow.
And that's what I love about filmmaking. Filmmaking is nothing more than advanced problem solving.
100%. And that's why I got into running a few years ago, because I saw a lot of similarities in running and filmmaking. That's all it was. Like, when you're running, I was doing ultra marathon, so I was running for hours and hours, and that's all it is. Like, when you're running is figuring out how to take the next step, how to go the next mile. That's pretty much what wedding filmmaking was for me from 2019 to 2021, was just, let's problem solve this thing and get a little bit better over time.
Do you find that other entrepreneurs but especially creative entrepreneurs, have some type of good, healthy relationship with physical exercise?
I would say yes, or they are aspiring to have that thing. It has just been kind of a common theme that, like, and I've really noticed this in like the ultra marathon world, is like business owners and entrepreneurs love to challenge themselves in all areas of their life. And that's been true to me. I think that's been true to you. It just has so many different similarities, but also so many differences in what you're doing, but it's still the same concept. It's like, let's figure this thing out and let's accomplish it. And it's kind of that thing, like, the reason you get into business is it is fun and unknown. So when you start to like learn about business and you start to understand business, you want to challenge yourself in another aspect of your life. So like for you, it's been CrossFit this last year. Like you kind of have conquered what business is these last few years and you figured it out. And I would imagine it's like, well, what's the next thing I could figure out in my life to just be a little bit better?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing for me. Is like, it has nothing to do with adrenaline. It has everything to do with, I'm very interested in problem solving.
Yes.
Like the Apollo 13 scene, watching that as a kid, where they're like, hey, here's some duct tape and cardboard and tube sock, figure out how to make a, CO2 scrubber so that these guys don't die. And then watching Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon up there, they don't die because these people on the ground figured it out.
Yep.
And I think for me, that's what my brain is like. I found this out a few years ago. I love untangling Christmas tree lights.
Yep.
It's problem solving. It's like the tactile, but it's also like so if that's over here, like where are all the loops at? And so like for me, the last 8 months, every day going to CrossFit it's been really helpful for my brain, because it's like, okay, community is great. The physical exercise is great, but it's almost like the strategy.
Yes.
Like so now that I'm not dying every morning, I need to start dialing in my nutrition, but then I also need to make my sleep better. And so you're dialing in all 100%. These different things. Okay. Talk to me now. So we've gone your first wedding shoot, you showed up, you figured it out. What is something that you would go back in time and you would tell younger Austin, hey bro, one lesson for free, here it is.
My one lesson starting out wedding filmmaking is document everything. What I'm not saying is document everything on day of the wedding. I'm saying document the process of filming the wedding. Share that you're going to film this wedding. Like if you're just getting into wedding filmmaking, the number one piece of advice I have is share your creative process. it will lead, and especially a wedding, like it will lead to 5 more weddings in the snap of a finger.
Yep.
If you say, hey, I'm going to shoot this wedding today. Oh, like here we're at, like I'm shooting these vows now, and now we're doing the first look, and you're just sharing that. Like 100%, you will book another wedding in the next week just because people see the process. Yes, people love the product, but they just want to see how you're doing and getting to the product more than anything.
I have a hot take.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that people will say, oh, well, I booked Austin because I saw him posting his stories, yada, yada, yada. I agree, but I want to add like an additional layer.
Okay.
This is just a theory. I think on the subconscious level, they see how you do it, and they're like, he seems like a cool guy to have at our wedding that day.
100%.
Because there are other wedding videographers that they could have chosen, and maybe even for cheaper.
Yes.
But they chose you.
Yes.
What's the thing that makes you different? It's your personality, man.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing that is great for business in general. People will book you because of your product. People will refer you to your personality and how easy it was to work with you. Like, I've even had multiple brides that have referred me to their friends without even seeing their wedding film yet. They haven't even seen the product, but they realized that I was just easy to work with during the day. That's another thing. If you're getting into wedding filmmaking, do not be the know-it-all. Do not be the person who is in charge and has to like feel like you're doing too much. As a videographer especially, just mind your business during the wedding day and don't just be a fly on the wall. That's all you have to do. Be a fly on the wall with your camera and simply capture what is happening.
This is going to turn into an Austin interview episode because I have 1,000 questions. We're not going to do mine today. We're going to do yours.
And the thing is too, 100 weddings is a lot. Like
it is. And is that how many you've done?
I mean, right at it. Like right at 100.
Jeez, oh Pete.
It's 20 a year
many
over
people
the last
saying their
5
vows.
years. And that's counting this year. So really it's been 100 over the span of 4 years. Like,
okay. So on the note of day of personality wise, right? I think there is an unspoken thing that keeps a lot of people from being booked more or booking at higher price points. And I think it's being able to work with other people. What are some things that you've seen from working with other vendors that you've been like, oh man, that was a great thing that they did. Like it was a small touch, but you picked up on it because you knew what they were doing and it made the difference. And then I'm going to ask you following that, what's a couple things you've seen other vendors do that you're like, oh geez, yeah, no way I'd recommend them.
so, and I'll kind of hit it from 2 aspects here. The vendor talking to me as another vendor and then the vendor working with the actual couple. The one thing I've seen, and I'll really say like photographers, because that's who I'm with, like, hand in hand all day. The thing I've seen, and this is also the thing not to do, but the thing I've seen that a photographer has done that has really set them aside is they have not made the day about them at all. And this is one of my least favorite things about when I work with a vendor is they try to share so much about who they are throughout the day. Like, yeah, I did this and my last couple did this. And they're sharing so much that is not pertaining to the actual couple, and it's taken away from their day. But what I've seen when I've worked with certain photographers is they are so in the moment with that couple, even though they have 3 weddings that weekend. They shot a wedding yesterday, Friday, right? And then they shoot a wedding on Sunday, and this is Saturday. And they're not talking about anything other than that couple right there. And what it has done, it is like that couple feels like they are the only thing that matters that day. Because they are. They're the only thing that matters for us vendors. Like, that should be the truth. Like, when we're there, like, that is our focus. And that has opened my perspective up. Like, whenever I'm shooting for a couple, they have my full attention that day. And that's when I've seen the vendors, like, be at their best, too,
I think that's really interesting. I'll name drop here. So Elena Janes is a photographer. She's done our family photos for years now. And so I have one daughter who's like all in. Nora, she's all in on the photos.
Yeah.
When we first started, Ellie was a lot younger and she was super hesitant. But we started, we nicknamed Elena the Ellie Whisperer.
Yeah.
Because as soon as Ellie would get out of the car, Elena made a point to form a connection with her.
Yep.
And it was just and obviously she's capital P professional, right? She knows her craft, but while we keep going back and we refuse to book with other vendors is because of her ability to make that connection.
And you, as a creative, her day was probably hectic. Her day was busy.
Dude, I know she had editing, 18 families just before us on mini sessions.
But
yeah.
You're the only thing that matters to her in that moment.
Absolutely.
And that is evident. That's why you keep going back to her.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's amazing is because, and this is one of the things I respect about Elena is capital, obviously, like I say, capital P professional, but she also has prices that respect her abilities. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When I see those prices, I'm like, honestly, you raise them a little bit more, I'd still pay them.
Don't let her see this.
No, I mean, I would tell her too. I would text her right now and tell her. But that's the point. I think there's a certain point where, the reason she's able to do what she does at the level that she does it is because everyone has the same experience we have.
Yeah.
And genuinely caring about your clients. Man, and I get it, the saying that, business is just business. I think a lot of times people use that as an excuse to be a jerk, right? I think business, when it's at its best, is actually really very personal, or maybe a better phrasing would be it's very personable.
100%.
You have to be able to have objective conversations. Yeah. But then, when I'm working with my clients who, a lot of my work, my biggest clients I've had ongoing relationships with for years. Mm-hmm. They seem like family to me. And the reason I think it works so well is because, I genuinely care about their success. Yes. In fact, a lot of the people that work with those clients think I'm on staff with them. Mm-hmm. Because I see myself as no, man, we got to figure this out. We're all part of the team.
And I'll throw this out there. You have meetings in here a lot on Zoom and stuff. And what I've noticed is before anything in the meeting gets discussed, you ask them how they are doing. You ask them personal questions. That is one of the biggest keys for business. But for anything you do where it involves you have a service or a product for another person, ask them how they are doing first. When I show up to a wedding, I don't just say hey, you ready to go do your vows right now? No, I hey, how's the morning going? Is there anything I can do for you right now? Video aside, do I need to go to the store and get you a Diet Coke? Literally, it's just be there. They paid you to do a video, sure. But what you can do on top of that is what's going to keep people referring you to other people.
So I went as far as a few years ago, I made a note on my phone, separated by clients, of a lot of the main people I work with, what their favorite drinks are, their birthdays, anniversaries. And then the clients that I have, they also have boards. And so those people that I've had relationships with now for years, I make sure to write down their kids' names who are, adults, where those kids are attending college. Not because I'm trying to be too salesy, but it's because I genuinely care. Yes. I have watched their kids grow up and graduate high school, move on to have these big, college careers and then careers. Yep. And so it's one of those things. It's no, it's the same way I treat my calendar. I put family events on my calendar, not because, I want to businessify my family.
Right.
It's because they're important enough to me to block everything out for. And the same thing for clients. If I'm going into a meeting with one of their boards, I want to make sure that I remember what their kids or grandkids' names are, what their spouses' names are, whose spouse has cancer. And make sure to ask about them.
Yes.
Because that is what we're here for. We're not here to do business. We're here to be good people.
100%. And same thing with the vendor. So what have I noticed when a vendor does something good? So I've got 3 photographers right now that I refer any bride to. And you want to know why? It's because when I worked with them, not only were they present for the couple, when I worked with them again, they remembered all the things I told them the first time. They, number one, remembered my name, because it blew me away working with a photographer multiple times. You show up, they don't remember my name, and I'm like, what do you like? I'm not asking you to follow my whole life on Instagram, but like, you at least remember my name. Like, we've worked together like 4 times, right? But that's the thing. Like, the photographers I've worked with, who I would refer anyone to, they remember the things that are important to me. Like, you know, you spend a lot of time with the vendors on a wedding day as a filmmaker. So you share a lot about your life. Like, there's some downtime. You're sharing like what's going on in your life. When a photographer remembers that wedding to wedding, months later, years later, that means a lot. Like, as another vendor, and we have a lot of power in this industry to determine who gets booked, right? Like, a photographer has a lot of power to decide if I get booked, because there's going to be couples that ask them, who do you want to work with? Like, you're my photographer, but I want you to have the best day. Who do you recommend? And I hope I'm at the top of that list for them as they are for me, right?
Dude, totally.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when you consider that aspect right there, that you have the power to both recommend and then they have the power to recommend you, that just comes back to the principle of being a good human. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time at the very beginning, and it's like, what camera do I need? What filters do I need to shoot with? What technique do I need to do? And it's like, hey man, lady, whatever, you're going to figure that out.
Yeah.
You're going to figure that out.
Yep.
The best thing to do the day of is to concentrate on, am I bringing value to them? Am I supporting them?
Yes.
Are you ready for some more questions?
Fire. I'm loving this, by the way.
Okay, so when you consider now the landscape of wedding videography and where it might be going, I'm curious if you have any predictions on like the summer of 25, 26, 27. Where do you think this is going?
I think it's shifting. And here's what I will say too. Like, I have filmed a lot of weddings in the past. That was my primary income for the first probably 3 years of business, full-time business. I'm making a massive shift in my business now where I'm not taking on as much weddings, but I will always be shooting weddings. Like, even if it's 5 a year, like, weddings have such a massive part of my like heart in business, because number one, from a like really early stage, I recognized that I was just organically good at it. Like, I didn't really have to, you know, I learned a lot shooting a lot of weddings, but I was organically good at storytelling a love story. And I want to hold on to that. But where I see like weddings going, even though I might not be doing as many of them, I see it becoming very raw and authentic, like the wedding films. I imagine the cinematic style wedding films are kind of taking like backseat for a while. I did a lot of the cinematic ones, like a lot of, you know, super smooth moving shots, all gimbal, like everything felt cinematic. Like, even the way it was set up, like even the vows, like they look cinematic. I think now people just want what was real in the moment.
They want that story from the day.
100%. It doesn't have to be polished necessarily. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, there's some shaky footage. Let's throw it in there, because that shot was one of the most important shots of their like love story on the wedding day.
So this gets back to, and I'm going to pull my phone out again, just as an example. This right here, there have been so many times where, you know, because when you're working for a client and you're kind of on my side of things, like just overall communications, you're going to put together a video that's going to be shown to a few thousand people, and it's going to have been shot with this, and it's going to have been shot, you know, in portrait, you know, orientation, and it needs to be the screen that they're showing it on to be in landscape. And so what I've found is I care a lot about that. Other people don't. What makes the story effective is just the story 100%. And crafting that in the edit. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really, I've already noticed here in the last few years. And I'll also say this, like I don't enjoy wedding filmmaking as much as some of the other people that I've just kind of been in this social media like realm with the last few years. because there's some people that are my age, some other guys specifically that are in this wedding filmmaking, and they are just more invested into it than I am. Like, I'm invested into like growing my business promotion, my creative like side of business. I've already noticed it in their films though. Like, these are guys that are, top dogs here in Kentucky, like in the wedding filmmaking space. They've already began that shift of, let's not make it cinematic. Let's make it real. Like, what were people feeling that day? And so, yeah, that's where I see wedding. So if you're getting into wedding filmmaking right now, I think that is what you should be focusing on, the love story of the day, not making every shot super smooth or like the color's perfect or like everything's perfect. Like, what was the story? What was the day?
And so I think what's interesting about that is if people want to anticipate business trends, right? So this is a moment where we can extrapolate these principles out to other businesses. You don't have to be Nostradamus where you're trying to predict the future.
Right.
Instead, you can just be a little bit more towards the edge of, what do I see people wanting that I can do for them?
Yes.
And I think that's where the idea we talked about at the very beginning of shooting stuff on your phone, if you're just trying to break into the game, not trying to go immediately into a wedding film, but shooting content for couples.
Yes.
Like, that idea is something that you see couples trying to do for themselves. Mm-hmm. It matters to them because that's just how they share stories. But you can also provide that as a service, and you could bring in an intern. You could bring in your, if you have older kids who has that
couple $100 a day. Like,
that's it.
And
it's a small cut, but a big add-on.
You get couple $100 for $5,000 wedding. A day later, you book that. It's 100% worth it.
Yeah.
And this is one of the biggest things I learned. And when I noticed this back in probably 2021 or 22, is people didn't care about seeing the wedding films. And I'm talking like brides to be. They did not care. They did not care about like watching the wedding films. They wanted to see that 30 second to 1 minute video on Instagram a few days after. And that, when I started posting those little teaser videos, and every wedding filmmaker now does them, like, you have to post a little teaser if you want to keep business booming. And that's what I did in that time, 2022. And I had to turn down so many people because I just filled my social media with those little teasers that took no time. We're talking like an hour or two compared to however long it takes for a wedding film, 20 to 40 hours of editing. That was one of the biggest keys. Like, share the best moments in 30 seconds. Share the best moments in 1 minute and watch what happens.
And I think there's a lot of power in that. There is so much to be said about the perceived value of what you're creating. Because some people would say, weddings right now, anywhere probably from $3,000 up to $12,000 on the high end in Kentucky.
Around this.
When I think about that, there are going to be some people who, and I think this is what's particularly difficult about weddings, is you're not dealing with a business who is used to this frame of spending, right? And so folks, when you throw out a price of $3,500, I would say maybe a third of them don't bat an eye. 2/3 of them are like, oh,
100%.
Interesting.
And I'd say the numbers even align right there with like the amount of inquiries, like, right, and then the success rate of booking. Yep.
But the person who isn't asking how much that, or isn't questioning how much that is, it's the person who knows the value. It's the bride. It's the groom, because they know what it means to them.
Yep.
And to have that. And that's really what it comes down to. And this isn't, obviously isn't going to be a conversation that turns into why justifying prices. But I think it does indicate that there is a perceived value that is different to the beholder of the opinion. Mm-hmm. So the parents of the bride or groom might see the perceived value differently than the bride or groom versus, Aunt Sally Mae or a friend who's attending,
And it's so funny too, because I've had aunts book me and the bride and groom didn't want to book me, but the aunt was so persistent about they need a wedding film. And then it's cool to see, and they weren't like, I don't know what you're doing here. I didn't want you here. They're just like, we weren't going to book a videographer, but our aunt really wanted us to have a video and say they ended up booking. And it's just funny, like, to see that play out after the fact. They're like, oh, I'm so glad you were, like, after they see the video, you know, like, they're like, she was so right. But that was funny, like, the first time that happened to me, when, like, an aunt or a mom booked me and the couple could have cared less. Like, that was really funny.
And I think that does get into a question of, and this is an age-old thing, but I would love to know your opinion. Not age-old, but in the last 2 decades. Do you think that people like the photos or the video more? And you can also you can answer that maybe that's an unfair question, that it's apples and oranges.
Which one they like better? It's so tough because even like when I think about myself, look, like our photos, I didn't realize until I got married the power of wedding photography. Like, those photos literally are like, they're so priceless. But hearing us say our vows to one another unlocks an emotional area of myself that I have never experienced before. Like, when you hear yourself in front of your like soon to be wife, you watch it like 2 years later, and you hear those promises you made to one another, and you see the moment and you see like the emotion. I mean, I don't think. Are you asking me what my favorite is?
Or sure.
You just in general?
No, just go for it.
I think they literally both have so much power. Like, your photos, you get reminded every day. You put them on the wall. Like, it's a constant reminder. That video is just like, it's that emotional reminder of what you did that day. I think that's what I think they both hold so much power. Really, yeah. I really truly believe that. I think probably photos are a little bit more important, just because I think photos are like the easy access we're always going to have. It's what we're going to put up on the walls. It's what our kids are like going to see, like things like that. But video is also just priceless in its own way. So I skated around the question.
It's a very diplomatic answer. I love it. Okay, so landing the plane here. Thinking about back to our original question of someone starting out new,
yes,
and they're like, man, I want to film weddings. This is something I want to be in. You know, maybe they're a college student, maybe they're not. Maybe they're well into their career. They're starting it as a side business, starting it as the business. When you consider the landscape at play, give them the top 3 tools they need to think the most about. And then the last question I'm going to ask you is, what are the top 3 things they need to remember that day?
Okay. Top 3 tools. And I'm going to assume like maybe someone's never shot a wedding before. And I'll start with equipment. I think before your camera, invest in audio. I wish I would have known this so much. And this was something I was hard-headed about for so long. I've never been an audio person. I never had any background in audio. I didn't care about audio. I was like, whatever. The moment I invested into having good audio was the moment I took my wedding films from like here to there. Like, because that is what tells the story, is like the actual voices of the loved ones or the couple on the wedding day. So focus on your audio. Like, if you're just shooting your first wedding, focus on your audio. It's the most important thing that tells the story of the wedding day. Number 2, like I said, video everything from the day. Video you packing up the equipment to shoot your first wedding, because what that does is you stretch out that 8-hour day. You know, you stretch the content from that day and post it, and bookings will like happen organically. If you've never shot your first wedding, you stretch that 8-hour day into 10 social media posts, I promise you'll book another wedding in a week. Like, that's just how it is. And then what was your secondary part of that question? Did you do
all 3? Like, what are the top 3 things, like gear-wise, you need to focus on?
Another tool?
Yep. Just give me one more tool.
I would say trying your best to have multiple camera angles if you're like self-shooting a wedding, whenever I really leaned into that, probably a year into wedding filmmaking. And so, especially like for any moment of the day that, there's two people, having the emotion of both parties during that, like, for a letter reading or vows, or like during the ceremony, when you have the emotion of the bride and you have the emotion of the groom, it takes the wedding film just to a whole nother level, because you are telling, and you mentioned this one day to one of your clients, audio is important, but when you can stack a visual emotion on it, you're telling twice as much information on that shot. And it's the same for audio. People think visual is the most important thing. It goes hand in hand. If you can stack what is being said with the emotion of what they're feeling, you've doubled the information on the screen at that time. I know that makes sense to you. I hope that makes sense to everybody listening, that, I mean, you stack emotion from video and audio, it enhances a wedding film so much.
Yeah. So 3 things that folks need to remember on that day.
On that day. I would say, and I'm going to rank them in the list of most important. Most important, you are there for the couple. Nothing else matters. Sometimes you don't know their family history. You may think, cousin is perfect with them, and when you're talking to them, you want to make Cousin's Day. No. The couple is your main priority. You focus on the couple. Don't worry about what anyone else like kind of tells you. Like, you go off the couple or the coordinator, and that is your investment of that day. Number 2 goes back to the vendor thing. Vendors are your best friend, not only for the day, but for the months after. If you're wanting to make wedding filmmaking sustainable, the coordinator is your best friend for booking more weddings. The photographer is your best friend, or the videographer, maybe if you're wanting to get into photography, they're your best friends for booking more weddings. And I'm thinking like business minded here, like how can you stretch this out and make it sustainable? That's kind of like the way I'm thinking of this. And then number 3, leave an impact. So one thing I do at the end of every single wedding, I go up to my couple and I tell them how grateful I was just to be a part of their day. And I make sure to hug them. I make sure to ask them, like, is there anything else you need before I leave? So the first thing they hear when I get to a wedding is, hey, is there anything you need? How's your day going? And then what they hear at the end of the night is, congratulations. Is there anything else you need? So they know my priorities when I got there was, what do you need? And they know when I'm leaving, is there anything else I can do for you? Yeah. Like those are my top 3 tips that have helped me book 20, 25 weddings over the last 4 years.
So if people are wanting to get a start, I think this is a great place. Like, this is a playbook that I would have loved to have had in general, just for business.
Yes.
About being customer focused, about being truly, like, genuinely, authentically there for your people that day. But then also, like, practical. These are the things that you need to be focused on. Don't be distracted by every YouTube video with a fancy thumbnail that tells you the 15 different tools you need on your wedding day.
No. Like, when you get to a certain point, gear matters, and it really does. It can help take you to the next level. But at the start, just be present on a wedding day. And maybe overshoot. That would be another one of those like tools I would throw in there. If you don't know what to shoot, overshoot. And then over time, like, so I probably went, when I was first filming weddings, I would probably have like 400 videos. And now I'm at like 150, and those 150 are gold, or 200, like somewhere in there. So I've cut down half of what I was filming, and my wedding films are so much better. Like, you just kind of figure out what is important versus not important. But maybe early on, overshoot.
Make that shot list too, so you don't forget the most important things to do. You can always, if you freak out that day, you can always remember, shoot a wide shot, a medium shot, a close-up shot, and then get get faces on the screen, man. Faces on the screen.
The 3-shot checklist.
That's right.
Wide, medium, close-up.
That's right.
There you go.
Anything else?
I think that's good for now. Maybe we revisit this in a few months and get a little bit more in depth of how to grow a sustainable wedding filmmaking business. This is more just getting started. But also, like, if you're still listening, if this is something you're passionate about, reach out to me. Like, I love sharing the things I've learned about wedding filmmaking. I'm kind of to the point now where, like, I organically don't even have to post weddings anymore, and I'm still getting bookings for them. That is where you want to be in the wedding filmmaking industry, because it can be a creative burnout place when you're trying to keep up with the trends and things just to get bookings. But when you get to the place where your work tells itself and people just book you because of the portfolio you built over the last few years, that's a great place to be.
Yeah. And your work definitely does that. I mean, like, I can tell when it's a film that you've put together, like, your style, everything is not only consistent, but it continues just to iterate a little bit more every time, and they're more and more interesting to watch.
So maybe that's another little nugget you just threw in.
There you go.
Find your style.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you got to make every wedding film like the other one.
That's right.
Find your style.
All right, man. We good?
I think so.
All right. So
we didn't even get to your.
Oh, it's totally fine.
We'll get to it next week.
Yours was fascinating. Episode 7. It's been 6 ounce flat white.
This was a 16 ounce. It's about 6 ounces left. So
on the cold brew.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. All right, guys. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Peace.